Hi, I'm David, I'm 38, and until Friday night, I thought I had everything: a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio, a stunning wife, and the ability to finally show my parents true luxury. Turns out, what I really had was a receipt for $1.3 million and a very active imagination regarding my wife's fidelity. The gift was the culmination of 3 years of planning: a brand new, impeccably furnished luxury penthouse in the tallest building downtown. It was spectacular: floor-to-ceiling windows, panoramic city views, and a dedicated guest suite for when we stayed over. I handed the keys to my parents, Jim and Martha, at a lavish housewarming party I threw in the penthouse itself. They were overjoyed, absolutely ecstatic, finally living the life I felt they deserved. Sarah, my wife, was mingling, looking flawless in a silk dress, constantly referencing our generosity. It was perfect. Around midnight, my cousin, Ethan, a smooth-talking leech who always seemed to linger near any large transaction, suddenly went missing from the main crowd. Sarah was also nowhere to be seen. I figured Ethan had cornered her to pitch some idiotic crypto scheme. I went to look for them, checking the various rooms, finally heading toward the quiet, opulent guest suite, which was strategically located on the opposite side of the penthouse from the main living area. I needed to let them know the caterers were packing up. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open gently, ready to apologize for interrupting. I didn't need to apologize, I just needed to buy a flamethrower. There they were, celebrating my gift in the most intimate, stomach-churning way possible, using the brand new, custom-made linens I had personally selected. Sarah looked up, not with shock or shame, but with annoyance, as if I had interrupted a mildly inconvenient business call. Ethan, on the other hand, scrambled, his face the color of the cheap champagne we were serving. The room, which I had envisioned as a peaceful retreat for my parents' visitors, was now the scene of the most profound betrayal of my life, all while the party celebrating my monumental gift was still winding down less than 50 feet away. The $1.3 million investment had just bought my wife the perfect private venue to cheat on me with my cousin. My initial reaction wasn't rage, it was a cold, surgical clarity, the kind you develop when you've had to fire a trusted VP or dismantle a failing company. The noise of the party suddenly felt distant, muffled, and entirely irrelevant. Sarah finally spoke, pulling the sheet up slightly. "David, this isn't what it looks like." The classic, idiotic line. "No, Sarah," I replied, my voice dangerously even. "It looks exactly like you and Ethan are enjoying the guest suite of the $1.3 million penthouse I bought my parents. It looks like you decided to celebrate my massive financial achievement by having sex with my cousin. Is that an accurate summary, or should I hire a forensic team to clarify the scene?" Ethan, struggling to find his dignity, stammered, "David, please, it was a mistake. We've been drinking, it just happened. It just happened in the one place in this building where you knew you wouldn't be disturbed." I nodded, walking slowly into the room and closing the door behind me. I didn't yell, I analyzed. "Sarah, you've been wanting to leave the marriage for months. You just wanted to ensure the timing didn't interfere with your access to my wealth. Ethan, you always wanted a piece of my success. I guess you just found the quickest route." Sarah's annoyance turned into hard resignation. "Fine, David, it's over. You're never here. You're always working. You gave me a beautiful life, but you gave me no time. Ethan understands me." I almost laughed. "Ethan understands your credit card debt, Sarah. He understands how to leverage someone else's assets." I looked at them both, my corporate instincts taking over. This wasn't a marriage. It was a failed partnership, and I needed to ensure my exit was clean and decisive. "Get dressed now, both of you. You are leaving my parents' penthouse immediately." I didn't give them time to argue. I walked back to the main party, where the ambient sound of jazz and chatter instantly hit me. I walked straight to my father, Jim, who was talking to a friend about the penthouse's amazing views. "Dad," I said, putting my arm around his shoulder, "we need to have a quick family emergency." I pulled him and my mother, Martha, into the kitchen. "I just found Sarah and Ethan in the guest suite. They were having sex." Martha gasped, covering her mouth. Jim, ever the stoic, simply raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure, David? I am the world's leading expert on what my wife's body looks like. Dad, trust me." I looked at them, my heart aching. "I am filing for divorce, effective immediately, and here is where we get strategic. This penthouse is yours. It is legally deeded to you. Sarah is entitled to nothing related to this property. Do you understand? You must protect the asset." Jim nodded, his face hardening with a protective fury that was almost comforting. "She gets nothing from this house, David, not a napkin." I had to ensure the scene was public to stop any pretense of a secret affair. I walked back into the living room, retrieved my glass of champagne, and tapped the rim with a spoon. The party slowly quieted down. "Friends, family," I announced, raising the glass. My voice was calm, projected perfectly. "Thank you all for celebrating my parents' beautiful new home. Before you leave, I have one last announcement. My wife, Sarah, and my cousin, Ethan, have decided to celebrate the gift in their own way. They are currently exiting the guest suite and our lives. I will be filing for divorce first thing Monday morning. Please join me in raising a toast to single life, and to the fact that they've just forfeited any claim to my future assets." The reaction was pandemonium, gasps, whispers, and stunned silence. At that exact moment, the elevator doors opened, and Sarah, dressed and furious, emerged with Ethan slinking behind her, carrying her coat and handbag. They walked into the stunned silence, having missed the entire toast. The look on Sarah's face when she realized I had not only caught her but publicly annihilated her reputation in front of our entire social circle was priceless. She wasn't just caught, she was financially and socially incinerated, all within the walls of the $1.3 million penthouse. She was now legally blocked from ever claiming. Sarah's carefully curated facade of sophistication shattered completely. She didn't yell. She launched herself at me, her eyes burning with a venom I hadn't seen before. "You pathetic, calculating piece of garbage! How dare you humiliate me like this?" I didn't move. "I didn't humiliate you, Sarah. You chose a very public forum for your infidelity, and I simply reported the news. Now, you and Ethan need to leave. The property is private." Ethan finally stepped forward, trying to intercede. "David, this is insane. We'll talk about this later. You can't just throw us out." "I absolutely can," I said, gesturing toward my parents, who had now positioned themselves near the main elevator. "This penthouse is deeded solely to Jim and Martha. They are the owners, and as their son, I can assure you that they consider both of you persona non grata. If you refuse to leave, my father will call building security, and you'll be charged with trespassing on private property. Your choice." Sarah realized the game was over. I had orchestrated the gift precisely to protect the asset from her inevitable grab. She knew the divorce proceedings would be brutal, but she had just lost the immediate battleground and the last chance to save face. She turned her fury on the only thing she could touch: my parents. "You are vile, opportunistic creatures! You let him do this to me?" she shrieked. Martha, usually timid, simply pointed to the elevator. "Out, Sarah, you brought this on yourself." Sarah stormed toward the elevator, dragging a mortified Ethan behind her. The minute the doors closed, the party imploded into a chaos of whispers, questions, and awkward attempts at comfort. I was drained, but the adrenaline of the strategic victory was still surging. I had protected my parents' home, initiated the divorce on my terms, and publicly declared the terms of my separation. All within a matter of minutes. The next morning, the real war began. I was sitting at my kitchen table, preparing the initial divorce filing, when my phone rang. It was my brother-in-law, Gary, Sarah's older brother and a mid-level partner at a prestigious, aggressive litigation firm. "David," Gary snarled, skipping any pleasantries. "You have crossed a line. Sarah is a mess. I'm taking her case. We're going to clean you out. I want half of everything, starting with your entire real estate portfolio." "That sounds like standard divorce proceedings, Gary," I said calmly. "I look forward to sending your firm a massive retainer." "No, you don't understand," Gary continued, his voice heavy with menace. "Sarah just told me everything. She said your $1.3 million penthouse gift wasn't just a gift. She claims you had major tax evasion issues involving that property, that you used it to funnel untaxed money from offshore accounts, and that the deed transfer to your parents was actually an attempt to hide the asset from a potential IRS audit." My blood ran cold. The penthouse gift was clean, but my primary real estate holdings, the foundation of my wealth, were built on a series of complex, aggressive tax strategies that, while legal, were definitely in a legal gray area. If Sarah and Gary could find any link between those and the penthouse, they could freeze my assets, destroy my business, and turn my strategic gift into a federal indictment from my parents. "She's lying, Gary," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "Maybe," Gary replied, a chilling satisfaction in his tone. "But we have a witness, Ethan. He's been hanging around your accounts for years, pitching you schemes. He knows things, David, and he's highly motivated. You just made the $1.3 million penthouse the center of a potential federal investigation, and your parents are holding the key." Gary hung up, leaving me with a terrifying reality. Sarah and Ethan weren't just seeking revenge. They were attempting a total financial annihilation, leveraging the very gift I had used to secure my parents' future. The core weakness in my strategy was my past, legally ambiguous asset management, the kind of complex financial maneuvering that always leaves a paper trail, even when you think you've wiped it clean. And Ethan, the cousin who had failed to scam me for years, suddenly possessed the ultimate leverage, insider knowledge, and a deep resentment. I immediately called my primary corporate lawyer, Howard. I didn't mince words. Howard, I need a nuclear defense. Sarah and Gary are claiming tax fraud related to the penthouse gift, alleging it's tied to my offshore accounts. Ethan is their key witness. Howard swore under his breath. Ethan, the idiot, he's a liability. We need to cut them off immediately. We have to make the penthouse untouchable. The problem is, once a federal agency starts sniffing around a gift of that magnitude, they'll dissect the source of the funds. The source was clean, but the optics were terrible. The only way to stop Gary and Sarah was to ensure they had nothing to gain from exposing my financial gray areas. I needed to pivot the asset away from the public eye and make it impossible for Sarah to claim any moral high ground. I drove straight to the penthouse. My parents, Jim and Martha, were already packing a few bags, looking shaken. "We can't stay here, David," Martha whispered, wringing her hands. "If Gary is serious about the IRS, they'll seize this place. Everything we own is in here." "They won't seize it," I said, thinking fast. "Because it's not a gift anymore, it's a loan." I pulled out a pre-drafted, complex legal document that redefined the transfer of the deed. "I need you to sign this. It's a revocable trust agreement. It legally changes the nature of the penthouse transfer from an unconditional gift to a property held in trust for you, with me retaining the right to manage the asset should external legal threats materialize. It also includes an airtight clause that voids the agreement if the beneficiaries, you too, are found to be involved in any form of litigation or federal inquiry related to the asset." Jim looked at the document skeptically. "Why do this, David? Doesn't it just give Sarah more ammunition?" "No. It creates a legal shield," I explained. "If Sarah and Gary expose my past financial tactics, the IRS will target me, not you, and if they try to prove the penthouse was a fraud asset, the trust agreement proves it was merely a temporary transfer. More importantly, it ensures the property is temporarily removed from the public ledger as a gift. It becomes a complex financial instrument, which slows down the litigation process and buys me time to clean up my wider portfolio." Jim signed immediately. Martha looked reluctant but followed suit. They understood the implicit threat. They were safe as long as they remained clean. But if the IRS got too close, the trust agreement would allow me to swiftly pull the asset out of their hands before it could be seized, leaving them with nothing but their existing assets. It was a brutal defense mechanism, turning my $1.3 million gift into a volatile legal weapon against my own family, forcing their loyalty through financial necessity. With the revocable trust agreement signed, the penthouse was momentarily stabilized, but the main threat, Ethan's insider knowledge, remained. Sarah and Gary were already preparing their media strategy, aiming to paint me as a corrupt financier who abandoned his wife for his tax havens. I needed to neutralize Ethan before he could testify or provide damaging documentation. I knew Ethan's weakness. He didn't want the truth. He wanted a piece of the action. He wanted to be wealthy, not just vengeful. I used a burner phone and contacted Ethan directly. Bypassing Gary and Sarah entirely, he answered, clearly expecting a panic attack. "David, save your breath. Sarah and I are going to enjoy watching the IRS dismantle your empire." "Are you Ethan?" I replied, my voice calm and analytical. "Gary is promising you a percentage of Sarah's final settlement. That's years of litigation, massive legal fees, and if the IRS gets involved, the entire pot shrinks to nothing. You'll end up with a small, taxable sum and a reputation as a snitch. That doesn't sound like the high-risk, high-reward strategy you always pitch." He hesitated. I knew I had his attention. "What do you want, David?" "I want you to disappear, permanently, and I want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement stating that all knowledge you gained while advising me was protected by client privilege, including any conversations you had with Sarah. If you sign, Gary's case collapses." "And what do I get?" He sneered. "I give you exactly what you've always wanted, a clean, international startup. I'll finance a new venture for you, a completely legal, legitimate business registered in Liechtenstein. I'll give you a clean, untraceable $500,000 seed investment and a full, private consultancy contract, paid quarterly, on the condition that you remain silent, permanently. You walk away wealthy and clean. Sarah and Gary get nothing. You actually become a successful entrepreneur, Ethan, something you've been faking your entire life." The silence on the line stretched, thick with internal conflict. The appeal of instant, legitimate wealth was too strong for him to resist the slow grind of divorce litigation. He agreed to meet me at a neutral location, a high-end casino in Reno, where cash and anonymity are currency. Meanwhile, Sarah was attempting to retaliate by attacking my parents. She knew the trust agreement complicated her legal claim. So she resorted to emotional warfare. She called Jim and Martha repeatedly, demanding they move out of her penthouse, threatening to hold a lien on the property for emotional damages. My parents, protected by the legal document but emotionally exhausted, were crumbling. I intercepted a particularly vicious text message from Sarah to my mother. Enjoy your short stay, Martha. That penthouse will be mine by Christmas, and I'm turning your guest suite into a dog washing station. That petty, cruel text solidified my plan. My initial defense was about assets. The final attack needed to be personal. Sarah had to realize that she hadn't just lost a husband, she had lost her entire support system, and I needed to use the penthouse to deliver the final, devastating blow. The meeting with Ethan in Reno was quick and clinical. He signed the NDA and the consulting agreement, his hand shaking slightly, not from nervousness, but from the realization that he was finally rich without having to lie about it. The $500,000 seed money and the promise of more cemented his silence. Gary and Sarah had lost their key witness and the linchpin of their fraud case. The IRS threat evaporated immediately. Now, it was time to deal with Sarah. I could simply finalize the divorce and walk away wealthy and clean, but the image of my mother, trembling over Sarah's cruel texts, the threat to turn their home's guest suite into a dog washing station, demanded a more satisfying, public conclusion. I executed the final phase of my plan. Leveraging the revocable trust agreement. I called Jim and Martha and asked them to pack a single suitcase each and meet me at a high-end hotel downtown. They were confused but complied. Once they were safely settled in a luxurious, temporary suite, I executed the full revocation clause of the trust agreement. The legal document I'd had them sign weeks ago allowed me to unilaterally void the agreement at any time, instantly reverting ownership of the $1.3 million penthouse back to my sole control. I did this not to punish them, but to protect them from Sarah's harassment, and more importantly, to set the final trap. I immediately informed Sarah's lawyer, Gary, via an official letter, that the trust had been revoked, and the penthouse was now fully owned by David R. Hamilton, exclusively. Gary, thinking this was a massive, tactical blunder, immediately seized on the news. He saw the asset suddenly back in my name as a golden opportunity to claim a half share in the divorce settlement. The next morning, I arrived at the penthouse with a team of movers and a professional cleaning crew. The main door was sealed with a massive, brightly colored legal notice. Private property, trespassers will be prosecuted. Sarah, alerted by Gary that I had made a massive mistake, arrived minutes later, furious. You idiot! She screamed. Gary says you revoked the trust. This is community property now. You just handed me half the penthouse. No, Sarah, I replied, standing in the doorway. I revoked the trust because I needed the property clean, and it is clean. This penthouse was purchased and deeded before we were married, and it was never commingled with our joint assets. It is my separate property, legally established and proven. You get nothing. But that wasn't the final sting. I walked into the guest suite, the scene of the crime. I had the cleaning crew box up every single item in the suite, including the mattress, the drapes, and the custom-made linens. I replaced everything with a set of cheap, identical furniture. When Sarah followed me, demanding to see the proof, she found the pristine guest suite replaced with a tacky, impersonal replica. I handed her a final, notarized document. Your possessions from this guest suite, Sarah, are currently on their way to a storage facility in your name. Everything else is being sanitized, but since you were so fond of this room, and since you claimed you wanted to turn it into a dog washing station, I've had a specialized cleaning service install an industrial-grade washing basin, complete with professional drain and hoses. You didn't get the penthouse, Sarah. But I'm giving you exactly what you threatened to create. The sight of the industrial sink in the luxurious guest suite broke her. She wasn't just ruined, she was utterly defeated, watching her revenge manifest as a practical, utterly useless dog washing station in a penthouse she no longer owned. My final move was to ensure the public narrative was clear and absolute. I didn't want the divorce to simply fade away. I wanted a clean, dramatic conclusion that solidified my integrity and Sarah's betrayal. I ensured the press got a tip about the dog washing station in the luxury penthouse. The story went viral immediately. The cheated-on husband who, instead of selling, turned the guest suite where his wife cheated into an industrial-grade dog washing station. It was ridiculous, petty, and brilliant PR. I was painted as the wounded, yet hilariously vindicated, victim. Sarah became a punchline. Forever associated with canine hygiene and infidelity. I completed the divorce swiftly, giving Sarah only the bare minimum required by our prenuptial agreement, which, thanks to the penthouse being my separate premarital property, was significantly less than Gary had hoped for. Ethan, true to his word, remained silent, managing his new Liechtenstein venture with surprising, newfound competence. As for my parents, I waited until the legal dust settled and the media circus died down. I met them back at the luxurious hotel suite, where they had been relaxing for weeks, finally free from Sarah's harassment. I have the final paperwork, I told them. The penthouse is clean, the trust is dissolved, and the deed is back in your names. Unconditional gift, no strings, no liens, no Ethan, and the dog washing station is gone. I had it removed, and the suite has been professionally restored. Martha started crying, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief. Jim just looked at me, a profound respect in his eyes that had never been there before. You risked everything, David. You drew the fire onto yourself and then completely dismantled them. I protected the asset, I replied, handing them the keys. Now, enjoy your home, Mom and Dad, and I'm installing the best security system available. Next time, I want my parents to be safe from threats, whether they come from the IRS or my cousin. I had spent $1.3 million to buy them a home, and ended up spending a few thousand more to buy back my respect and their absolute, unwavering loyalty, the most expensive lesson in trust I'd ever had.